Here we are.
Here we are. Now that you are represented by the Toolip Art Gallery, for those who don't know you, tell us, where did you born? All these things, and then we will move to the next questions.
How do I possibly wind up here? I was born in Hamburg in Germany, and I grew up in the city. I made my first drawings, paintings in Hamburg. But I also traveled the world quite a bit. I did some long journeys, collecting impressions, meeting people. I always say nothing is more exciting and can teach you more but traveling.
But if we could start a little bit. You born in Hamburg?
In Hamburg.
Have you been living there in Hamburg?
I went to school in Hamburg. I moved a little bit outside of Hamburg, lived there for almost 2 decades. And now I'm living in the north of Germany, yeah, too, but in the north of Hamburg. So I was always living close to the city.
Beautiful city, by the way. For me, it's the most beautiful city in Germany.
It's the most beautiful city in the world, of course. No, I traveled the world quite a lot, but I always loved to come back to my hometown.
Fantastic, fantastic. And tell us a little bit, have you always been into the art? Or?
I've always been, in fact, yes, I remember the first things that I did that you can call being creative. I was sitting in the kitchen of my parents, and I had a little tape recorder at that time. And I was recording a story. I was telling a story, and I was doing the sounds for it, like opening or closing a door or a car moving. I can't remember what exactly I was recording. I lost the tape, unfortunately. It would be funny to listen to it now. But I was sitting there in the kitchen and doing this, all for myself, mumbling a little bit because my parents shouldn't listen what I was doing, a little bit embarrassed. But I had to do that. And I was always, of course, I started drawing, and I was always drawing sketches, comics, and later on switching to painting. At school, I did a lot of sketches, and I think my teacher didn't like it, but I loved it. And the other fellow art people loved it too. So, but then I was in school, and the teacher said, try some watercolor. So I had this small watercolor, and I wasn't happy with it because it was so small. So I tried the next bigger ones. But I was always going like this, and I wasn't very happy about it. When I left school, the teacher asked me and said, Andreas, please leave these paintings behind. I will show others. And I said, okay, keep it. And again, unfortunately, I lost it that way. Later on, I went to school and said, is the teacher still there? Can you give me back my paintings? But she was gone, and the paintings were gone. But after school, I was earning my first money, so I bought canvas, and I bought oil paint. Of course, still doing drawings and everything, but I started painting. And I started painting abstract art. And I met a person in a gallery showing my works, and she was asking, did you ever paint non-abstract, like things that really exist? And I said, I cannot do that. I tried, the flower, I tried, but in a second it becomes abstract. So I was always into abstract art. But I was always into photography. I always did photography since I was a young boy. Bought my first camera, did some shots here and there. And later on, when I started traveling, I was on my first big travel as a backpacker. I said, okay, I will see a little bit closer to it. What am I doing? How am I doing it? So I really started working on how does a camera work? How do I find a motive? How do I capture that motive properly? And during all these years, when I started to make exhibitions as a painter in Hamburg, I was thinking, how can I possibly combine photography and painting, just as an experiment? I tried things and I failed, of course. So Then after many, many years, after some decades, I must say, I thought, okay, I have an idea that I can pursue. So, and that's what we have here in your gallery is the result of, let's say, 30, 35 years of working on how to combine those things. I finally found a method to combine abstract art, photography, painting. Maybe later on we talk about this a little bit more intensely. But when now people look at my works, they say, "How did you paint that?" And I said, "No, I didn't paint that. I photographed it." And that's exactly what I wanted to achieve, and that's why I'm so happy about it.
I think you have closed the circle in this matter. But, of course, do not reveal all the techniques and all the secrets.
I won't.
Of course not. But this is impressive. It's not only about beauty; it's also unique.
Yes.
We have not seen. We are used to see hundreds of artists per month. No?
Yeah.
What we should know about this, or until how much you can reveal, or what can you tell us about?
Well, I'm working with organic materials, and I'm really, that's important for me. There's no working on the photo afterwards. There's no Photoshop. There's no AI. It's, as we photographers say, it's out of cam. What you see is what I photographed. There's no working on it, changing it, nothing. It's purely out of cam. And I honestly wanted to achieve that because working on photos, I mean, you're a photographer too, so you know how long you can work on single photos to change it, make it better, whatever. And I said I wanted to find a method where I really photograph something and it is as honest as a painting. Because later on, you cannot work on a painting and change it. It is like it is. So, and I did. And I'm working with organic materials, like going into the forest, collecting things, flowers, whatever, dirt even, and mixing it with liquids, with light. So some things that you see on the pictures, they don't even exist. It's just purely light. And what I wanted to achieve and what I achieved, and that's what I'm very happy about, is a certain depth in the picture. So when you look at the things, they are not just flat. They have a certain depth. That's why part of the pictures are very clearly to be seen, others are a little bit washed out, let's say. So that's what I wanted to achieve, that's what I achieved, and I love this highly detailed pictures. Last weekend, I was on an art fair. And a lady was approaching one of my pictures and she said, "Oh, I see a woman in there." And I said, I was a little bit confused. She said, "Where's that woman in the picture?" And she showed me and I said, "Oh yeah, okay, there's kind of a woman." And she said, "Did you see the glasses?" I said, "Where do you see the glasses?" And she pointed at that and said, "Oh yeah, there are glasses." So there are there are a lot of details. It's highly detailed. Of course, it's abstract and whatever you find in it, it's there. But I love that you can approach it and you can look very, very closely and you see very tiny, shiny little details. So I say you discover a world. You can really travel into the pictures. One picture is a world of its own and you can go and travel into it if you like it.
I love your answer, and I think you define very well your works, but at the same time you are defining yourself.
Of course, yes.
Artist,
yeah,
and a traveler.
yeah.
So we would like to move now into the next subject.
Okay.
What is your relationship with the travels? Because little bird just told us that you are traveling a lot. Tell us.
Well, I don't know how old I was. I came across a book from a German lady, and at that time there was no internet, nothing like this, only books and photos. Mm. And I read that book, and she was a backpacker, and she was traveling New Zealand. And she was describing the north of New Zealand, sheep and mountains and water and all these things. And I thought, wouldn't it be fantastic to be there like she was? Made an impression on me. So I always enjoyed different cultures and landscapes. So I thought, okay, I will travel too. I was very young at that time, but not so young that I was as old as a student. I was a little older. I already had a job, a very well paid job. I had a flat. So I quit the job, I quit the flat, and I started to travel as a backpacker. And I went to New Zealand. And I traveled New Zealand, Australia, Oceania, and Southeast Asia, and many countries coming back. And of course, if you do travel like that, it changes your life. It changes the perspective on life. And the most impressive thing that happens is you meet other people. The landscapes are beautiful. The cultures are beautiful and amazing and intriguing. But when you meet people and you talk to them, that lingers. And I still remember every single talk I had on this very first journey. And when we came back, at that time I was traveling with my wife, we came back, we said, okay, we want to do that again. Because, you know, even right now, I'm still talking about this travel, and it was ages ago, right? So we said, okay, we want to do that again. Now, then I founded a company, my daughter was born, we bought a house, you know, natural thing happening. So I couldn't pursue my art as intensively as I wanted. I couldn't travel that way. But after many years, I said, okay, now it's the time to do that again. So I sold my company. Unfortunately, I'm not with my wife anymore. And I said, now is the time to do traveling again. So again, I packed my backpack and I went on the second journey. And this time, I said, I don't only want to travel and meet people and spectacular places. I need a kind of red line through this kind of journey. So I said, okay, I want to write a book. And because I'm a kind of, let's say, philosophical person who likes to think about life and spirituality, and I came across, let's say, living in the moment as an expression a couple of years ago, I thought I want to talk about that. And I want to do interviews and talk to people of other nations and places about living in the moment, or why we constantly want to achieve things, are under pressure all the time. And that's what I did. So I traveled, I did interviews, and I met amazing people talking to me about this. Very emotional sometimes, very special. And this time I traveled the north of America, I traveled Middle and South America, and I went back to New Zealand. Why back to New Zealand? Because I had to leave New Zealand very quickly the first time, because the mother of my wife passed away, so we had to leave instantly, coming back to Australia, not to New Zealand. So I missed the north of New Zealand, but that was the point where I always wanted to go. So this time I finished my travel in the north of New Zealand. And yeah, I would always do it again. I can only say, please, people, do travel, you know. Even you don't have to travel for months or years, but do travel, meet other people, meet other cultures, hear other opinions, see some different art, read other books. So that's what life is about for me.
Amazing, very inspiring, very honest as you are describing, and also very encouraging, you know, because you have chosen not the standard way, which is safety, staying always in the same
Yes.
place, in the same company, the same
Yeah.
job. You have sold your flat, your house, your company, this and
Yeah.
that. So it's like a risky way, no? But in the end, it makes you also free, no?
What you give is what you get. If you give more, you get more. So there's a risk to it, yes, but only from a certain perspective. From the perspective of having fear about whatever, you know. But if you're more or less fearless, and I say I am, then you can do almost just anything. And you can go small steps. You don't, that's why I said You don't have to travel for a year or 1.5 that I did. You can travel for 2 or 3 months. And nowadays we have so many options. Doing it safely, being prepared. So I can only encourage people to do that.
Yeah, and also to travel is like help you to relativize things, you know. You are fearless because you have been passing through some situations that empowered you, you know, to continue. You know? People are afraid to do the first step. So if our audience follow your advice to travel a little bit more.
Yes, small steps first. You know, if you're unsure, talk to people, listen to travelers, seek for advice, and maybe do a journey for a week or a long weekend. Go where you normally would not go. And you discover that there are always people. You can always talk to people. You can always ask for help. And people are always willing to help. All my journeys, I never came across a single person being aggressive or not helping. People are curious. People like it when you can speak a few words in their language, you know. ¿Cómo estás? Yeah, Spanish, my Spanish, you know. Poquito, poquito, but lovely, you know. People talk about that. So people try to help, want to help. People took me around and showed me their country. I was there and I said, I want to see places, and they said, okay, I take my time and I will show you around. They did that for free, for nothing, because I was curious, you know. So I can only say, try.
Amazing. I hope we are going to put this in capital letters.
Please.
Andreas, tell us, we have two important events, organizing two important events with you. What people should know about them? If you can explain.
Yes. Yes, within the next half a year, I will be back here several times, but I will be here 2 times to do 2 presentations. The first presentation is about traveling. I will review my last big travel. And it's not just showing lovely photos or videos. I had a very close look to the environment. I'm a little bit philosophical. I'm reading a little bit out of my book. So it's a, I think, very intense and intriguing mixture of how to travel that way. And the second presentation I will do about photography. I will again refer to my very first travel. When I started my very first big travel, and there was no digital cameras at that time, I wondered, how do I capture all these beautiful places decently? And I said I started to work on my camera and how to find motives. And at that time, no digital cameras. I said, okay, if I go to a place and I see something that I like, I will do 1 shot only, because I was carrying around all this stuff. 1 shot only. And I did. And I was successful. That's what I say, because I still love the photos when I look at them. But what I did is I had a look at how to capture a motive. And today we have digital cameras, big ones, but we also have our phones. And the presentations that I will do is, it doesn't matter what kind of camera you have, absolutely unimportant. It's how to look at things and what to do to capture them in a very good way. Like birthday parties of children, up to I'm in the mountain, how to do that. So we fly through a lot of motives, and we talk about what can I do in that moment, what can I prepare, and what can I do afterwards a little bit. But mostly we talk about how to capture motives in a good way.
Wonderful. We cannot wait to share this with our people and to make it happen. It will be super useful for all of them, we're sure.
Hopefully.
And thank you very much for this first interview, the first of many more.
Gladly.
Interesting character. So people just wait and see. Thank you very much, Andreas.
Thank you, Fabian. Thank you. My pleasure.
Thank you. Very good.